I am what you would consider an outdoorsy person. I love primitive camping in dispersed areas of public land. I hike and explore in areas that are extremely rugged, and often a local guide is recommended for people that are inexperienced in hiking in these areas. I especially love hiking in Utah's high mountain peaks and deserts. I'm also trained and experienced with using bushcraft skills. I do everything I can related to the outdoors: fishing, boating, everything. Sometimes I am with family or friends, but usually I prefer to be alone in the explorations. It isn't recommended, even for people experienced with the outdoors. I am not your parent or babysitter, so I am not going to tell you what to do. But for your safety, if you do decide to solo explore anywhere, please have survival skills training with knowledge of local resources or wherever you are intending to adventure. One of the things I do, and I try to do this daily as a form of exercise, is metal detecting. When I am out on explorations, this often includes finding long ago abandoned mines, ghost towns, and other signs of pioneer settlements. During one of my explorations, I decided to attempt in finding a particular ghost town I had seen on an old map. I packed my gear and equipment and hit the road. The details in this report will come into play during the rest of the story. I arrived and set up my shelter. It was a two-man tent that requires staking into the ground and has a full cover rain shelf. Entering the tent means zipping open the rain shell and then zipping open the tent door. I found an area in a stand of juniper trees and pushed the stakes into the soft soil under the base of the trunks and roots. I was happy. It was early evening. My shelter was already up. I had my cooking fire roaring away and preparing itself for the juicy ribeye I was eating for dinner. While my fire was setting up, I performed a basic security check of my location. I walked around in a V-shaped line through the camp area and then explored the immediate perimeter. I was completely alone, isolated in desolation with no signs of current human activity for as far as I could see and hear. It was paradise. I didn't see anything of particular concern during my patrol, aside from taking the general precautions of possible wildlife encounters, snakes, mountain lions, etc. I headed back to camp, had dinner, a drink of bourbon, and went to bed around 21:30 hours. Before bedding down for the night, I performed one last sweep of my camp and ensured everything was locked down. I climbed in my tent, prepped my sleeping spot, put my gun in its normal spot next to me, and turned out my light. I awoke the next morning when the sun became too intense to bear. It was only just after 7 o'clock in the morning, and already hot as hell outside. My feet were facing east, so the morning sun was glaring directly into my face. I tried to pull my pillow and extra blanket over my eyes and create a shade tent. It worked. I started drifting back to sleep. Then my bladder decided it was also awake and desperately needed to be emptied. I fought the urge to get up and rolled back over. I started shutting my eyes again. Then I heard something that immediately sent shivers down my spine. Now, at this point, I will let you in on a little bit of background about myself, without going into any specific details. I have spent much of my working life in security and investigation positions. I have been involved in hostile situations requiring use of force and been assigned to high-risk cases. During the course of my employment, I have learned how to track and locate humans. With this adapted skill set comes certain abilities, like being able to identify details about someone based on listening to their footsteps. And this is exactly what caught my attention that morning. Laying in my tent with an overfilled bladder trying to burst out the front of my abdomen, I heard footsteps. Human footsteps. Very close to where I was laying. I lay completely still. In the desert, It is so quiet that you can hear pebbles bouncing off the face of boulders from across a canyon. Any movement I made would alert this person. I do not know their intentions, and definitely don't want them to come any closer to my tent. I froze, motionless, and focused on performing intentional breathing. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Repeat. This helped immediately slow my heart rate and allow me to reground my senses. The entire time, I'm listening to this person walking around my camp. From the sound of the footsteps, it is a male. Unknown age or appearance, though. Unknown height. Weight, approximately 180 to 200 pounds. His footsteps are alarming, aside from their presence. The way he is placing his feet is in an unnatural and intentional pattern. He isn't just strolling through, he is moving methodically, as if trying to tiptoe through the desert, the same way a predator moves while circling its prey, and trying to camouflage their motions so as to not disturb the surrounding environment. I continue listening and breathing, hoping my intentional breathing sounds like someone dozing heavily and unaware. He tiptoes away from me, towards my car. I listen as he tries pulling on the car door. I hear him walking around the car, probably looking into the windows. In the back seat is my daughter's car seat. It is always in there, even when I am out solo. I also have things like princess coloring books and a pink-colored pencil case sitting in plain view in the back seat. He has moved to the other side of my car now, where the footsteps are much further away. I take advantage of this moment and very quietly, but steadily, pull the zipper down on my sleeping bag. I take a second to stretch my limbs to relieve the tense cramping and quietly roll to my side. I grab my holster of my gun and quickly pop it from my belt. I rolled back into a more comfortable position and sat completely still again. I listened carefully to what the intruder was doing. He was still making his predatory walk, moving in all directions. South of the camp, approximately 50 feet, back to the camp. East of the camp, approximately 50 feet, back to the camp, as if he was checking to see if anyone else was around. Maybe checking to ensure there were no witnesses or passerby to interfere with whatever his plan was. Suddenly, he changed directions. He was walking my direction. Not walking, slow charging. The same intimidating walk that police officers do when approaching a suspect. Commanding. Purposeful. Marching directly towards my tent. His intense walking pattern was also making quite a bit of racket, so he was unable to hear anything I might have been doing. I slowly changed positions so I was sitting up, making sure to not make any drastic movements that would ruffle the tent. I quietly pulled my firearm from the holster and switched the safety to off. Opened its release in my hand. I pulled my arms into my chest, raising the gun to hold it, ready position. I waited. He was still on the march. Almost to the side of my tent, he stopped directly to the side and then slowly crept around, looking to see if I was awake. He then slowly walked around to the front of the tent and stood there. He walked back and forth a couple of times, looking in different directions. Then he came up to the tent door. I heard him undo the Velcro from the zipper on the rainfly. I held the grip of my pistol with my right hand and had my left laying flat peacefully across the top of the slide. With a certain amount of demonstrated violence and intensity, he yanked the zipper up. Zip! He stopped and looked around again to see if anyone had noticed that sound. Apparently not. He reached in and grabbed the second zipper and started trying to pull on it. The zipper that was 5 inches from my knee, and the only one separating myself from the person. The zipper was mildly jammed, so he was struggling for a second and trying to get the track to line up correctly. I took the second to let him know I was sitting there, squeezed the slide in my left hand, and racked my gun as hard and loud as I possibly could. Then immediately put my hands into the fire-ready position with the barrel pointing directly at him. He fell backwards onto his butt, taking 3 sliding hops back to escape while he was stumbling. He froze in place, and I can see his silhouette rise slowly from the ground with his hands up above his head. He stood in place for about 10 seconds, and then slowly stepped backwards, inching away from me with every move. He continued to walk away, stop, check to see if I was coming out, then move further away and repeat the process. Eventually, he sounded as if he had moved out of earshot, maybe 2 to 3 minutes after I pointed my gun at him. I crawled forward and opened the zipper on my tent door. The door for my rain shell was flapping in the breeze. I quickly identified my new point of cover and didn't see any signs of anyone being around. I dodged from my tent and was able to safely maneuver to the tree stand near my vehicle. I waited in between 2 junipers and scanned the entire area before emerging from my concealment to complete a detailed patrol of the camp. I didn't find anything out of place or suspicious after that. I do not know which direction the person even went, where they came from, and how they were able to access such a remote location while traveling on foot. To this day, it remains one of the most haunting experiences of my life. As for the rest of the trip, everything went as planned. Town is amazing, with a fascinating life story. I stayed for 2 more nights and didn't see a single other person the entire 4 days I was there. Sorry for such a long story, and thank you everyone who stuck through to the end. I hope my experience brings the readers a spooky sense of excitement. This was one of my first solo backpacking trips in the Spring Mountains in southern Nevada. My plan was to do Mount Charleston in 2 days, spending the night, then bagging the peak and heading down the next day. If you haven't been there, the trail is gorgeous. It winds up around the rim of a big valley before veering up to the summit ridge and offers just some awesome views. About 2 miles into the ascent, a faster hiker overtakes me. Rather than just nod and continue on, he stops and matches pace with me, and we strike up a conversation. Nothing particular was weird about what we talked about, but something was just a little off about him. He was too intense, too friendly. His charisma felt almost manic. You ever seen the interview with Tom Cruise where he talks about Scientology? This dude was like that. Same kind of artificial friendliness. He was too type A, too glib, almost like he was imitating a genuine reaction. I recall him telling me that he really liked challenging himself, but felt sick because nothing felt hard or exciting anymore. Nothing really made him hard like it used to paraphrase. Well, the Jabronis vibe was really freaking me out, so I made an excuse to stop for lunch. I had an awesome rest of the day. And as I hiked, he slipped further from my mind. I found a gorgeous campsite on a promontory jutting off from the valley wall and settled in for the night. As night fell, I started to feel weird. Full-blown jitters, man. My mind kept jumping back to how weird that guy was. To make it worse, I was cowboy camping, not even the dubious protection of nylon between me and the potential of seeing Smiley Guy. So in order to ease my anxious mind, before going to bed, I set my fixed blade knife in easy reach next to my head. I eventually got to sleep after listening to a few episodes of Mike Duncan's The History of Rome podcast. I slept unusually soundly, not walking once the whole night. When I woke in the morning, and I felt unusually content and well rested. That is, until I went to grab my stove out of my pack. The location of my pack wasn't the issue. It was where I had left it, leaning against a pine 5 feet from my pad. Now what really freaked me out was that every single pocket was open. All the zippers unzipped, all the snap closures unwrapped. The sleeping bag compartment was open. The interior mesh compartments were open. The buckle closures on my stuffed sacks were clicked open inside the bag. Nothing was taken, and the bag hadn't been moved, but literally every pocket was open. I wigged, dude. I had made sure they were all closed the night before. I'm fastidious with my gear. Someone had opened them. In panic, I took down to where my knife lay on the ground, next to my pad. Sure enough, the snap closure that held it to its sheath had been snapped open. Let me tell you, land speed record hauling butt off that mountain was achieved that day. Oh yeah, and the lights? Everyone has seen those, and no one is stupid enough to follow them. The scariest camping experience I can think of was an annual campout my search and rescue team does every fall. It's a retreat, and we do some training just to hang out and bond as a team. Well, we were doing night training, and my dog, who was trained for cadaver and man trailing at the time, alerted to a scent, so we follow it deep into the darkness. We got to a slick, creek bed, and I had a terrible fall. I slid to a small cliff and off it, broke 2 ribs, and concussed. I pressed the emergency alert on my GPS that signals base camp when we were either lost or have found the target and need assistance bringing them out. Well, my dog vanishes on me, and I hear footsteps a time later, and a super creepy random guy starts talking to me. Talks about how often people end up in the creek, how often people die because of a sudden flood during hurricane season or tornado season. Just something really off about the dude. He started to look for a safe way down into the creek, mind you. I'm barely able to breathe, let alone put up much of a fight. Then I hear it. My dog is part Aussie, and Aussie talks at us to communicate. It's a series of different barks. The guy looks off towards the noise and seems to decide to not come down where I was. I see one of our team's other dogs first, a massive German Shepherd. He's one of the softest, most sensitive dogs I know, and he immediately goes hackles up, teeth bared, growling and threat display, barking at the stranger. Dude backs away from Ranger and Brody. And Brody, my dog, appears and immediately does the same. Maybe 5 steps later are 2 of my team members. One was a former Marine officer, and the other guy did MMA professionally, not UFC, but one of those other pro promotions. The guy just stares at us as they try to extract me from the creek. The dogs continue to escalate their threat noises at the guy. He watched the entire time my teammates stabilized me and called for the backboard and the wheelie, which is an ATV wheel with a welded frame that the backboard can attach to. They wheeled me down to the camp, and our medical team cleared me. According to one of the nurses, the area we were working had a high number of assaults, both physical and sexual. I fully believe to this day that that's what would have happened, and that would have been my fate if Ranger hadn't shown up when he did. I'm still involved in SAR, and have a lot of weird stories from searches, but nothing quite as disturbing as the man that night. Brody is long since retired, and Ranger is nearing that age too. To this day, I don't know what scent Brody was following because the training wasn't set up in the direction we ended up. We did file a suspicious activity report with the police, but nothing came of it. I was a young Boy Scout at one of my first summer camps. Every night we ate dinner in a large mess hall. On one of the nights, the staff wouldn't let us leave because it was thunderstorming really bad outside. We sat and had to occupy ourselves for almost 3 hours before we could leave. Finally, they said it was safe to leave because the staff had not seen any lightning for over 30 minutes. My troop started walking back to our site, even though it was pitch black outside and still downpouring. Not 5 minutes after we left the mess hall, we saw a huge lightning strike stretch across the sky. But by that point, no one was willing to go back to that boring mess hall, so we continued to our site. Everyone in my troop huddled under an easy tent to protect ourselves from the heavy rain. Our campsite was on the outskirts of the camp with no other sites near us. No one but my troop should have been anywhere near our site, especially in this terrible storm. At some point, we noticed a faint headlight moving slowly through the woods. We knew no one was supposed to be out there. The two youth leaders in charge, Drew and Michael, started calling out to the person asking who they were. All of a sudden, the lights turned off. A moment later, a red light turned on and the glowing bulb sprinted away without saying a word. Naturally, all of us younger scouts started going absolutely bonkers at what just happened. Drew and Michael told everyone to stay put, and they would go out and see what was out there. After about 30 minutes, they came back and told us it was only a scout. They said a kid got in trouble during the day and had to come clean up in the area that night. I felt this was awfully suspicious. That story didn't seem real to me. Years later, I asked Drew what actually happened that night. He told me they went searching in the woods, but found absolutely nothing. There was no one and no sign of anyone. They made up the story to calm the younger boys down. But the truth was, something was lurking in the woods that night. It got very close to our site, even though nothing should have been there. I'm now 17, and I still have no idea who or what it could have been. For all I know, the creature could have just been silently watching us, but ran only when it was discovered. Had it been out there before? Will it return in the future? I have no way of knowing.